All right, Michael, so I thought we'd take a look at the internet weather for this week, and we actually have some interesting stuff to take a look at. This is the most probe ports, so this is where we see most of the scanning activity. No surprises, we're going to ignore the ones we talk about all the time, like Telnet, SSH, Microsoft SQL Server, web. This is your Microsoft file sharing, which a lot of the, is it WannaCry?
Yeah.
Was going after that. Now, this one, port 8080 TCP, is interesting. That's the alternate HTTP port, as its well-known port. But we'll get into what this is all about. The Ethereum, it's Ethereum cryptocurrency wallet. We've talked about that on the show. That's crept back up into the top 10 again, remote desktop protocol. And then at the bottom, well, this HTTPS, and then the bottom is Redis server, I think. Is it Redis?
Redis.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're going to go take a closer look at that one as well. In terms of the most sources probing, we have some repeated cast of characters and some interesting things in here. So 8080 TCP, not only did we see a lot of scan probes on it, but we're seeing a lot of sources scanning on this. It's in the number 3 spot now. And this is that Android debugger service. We're not going to look at it today, but we talked about it on the show. There's still some continued scanning activity there, trying to recruit devices into that botnet. Port 3333 TCP, we have not seen that on the list. Last week it was at position number 225, which is really way down on the list. It's gone up 218 positions. It's in the number 7 position, and we'll talk about why that is in a little bit as well. The other ones, BitTorrent, probably not interesting, probably not really malware related for the most part. And then 81 TCP is related most frequently to the go-ahead web server vulnerability that's been out there since last year, and we're still seeing some repeated scanning for that activity as well. So let's take a closer look at the Redis vulnerability. So it's kind of a choppy chart. So I actually did a 10-day moving average on this one. This is for the past 4 months or so, let's say. You can see there's a real normal kind of noise floor of activity here. And then somewhere around the late March timeframe, we started to see a real steady uptick in the number of amount of scanning on it. And there is a particular family of malware that's out there, Redis WannaMine, which is a cryptocurrency miner that is trying to exploit Redis servers. And IMPERVA did a really good write-up of this story back on March 8th, which aligns relatively with when we started to see that uptick of activity. And I did kind of pull out a little piece of their segment here. Once it infects the server, the Redis server, it actually puts a scan tool on here. And it's using mass scan, which is a really popular open source mass scanning tool. And you can see that they're scanning on port 6379 at a rate of 20,000 scan probes per second. So it's pretty high. So that's one to keep an eye on. If you have Redis servers as part of your network infrastructure, especially if it's internet facing, highly recommend that you secure those. So now port 8080 TCP, this is the GPON vulnerability, and you can see right around May 8th or 9th, so to speak, we started to see a real uptick in the number of sources scanning. So we went from basically very few to about, let's just eyeball it, saying like 26,000 scan sources per hour, roughly speaking. And this is definitely directly related to that vulnerability being announced last week, or maybe the week before even. And we started to immediately start to see a lot of botnets try to exploit this. NetLab 360 put together a really good write-up on this. They talk about the various botnets that they've seen starting to leverage this. I expect you're going to see a lot more. It's really easy. And I looked in our honeypot that we have, and I saw lots of probes come in. So one of the things I thought was interesting is their user agent is hello world that they're passing. That's a very unusual user agent. It's not valid. And then they're passing in these form parameters to the GPON. You can see that they're posting to the GPON form here. This is part of the exploit. And what they're doing is in the dest host, they're sticking in extra stuff in here. So they put a semicolon, and then they put their own command. And pluses actually get changed to spaces. So it's basically fetching this from this URL, writing it to this file /temp/r, and then it executes that. So then the other thing that I found interesting is that port 3333 TCP that we also saw climb up from like the sub 200 position all the way up into like 6 or 7. It's a little bit later. It still happens around 0509. Looks like they might have done some testing around that same time that the 8080 was happening. But then it really kicked off maybe 2 days later and up into the 11,000 or so scan sips per hour. It's likely related that all of this activity is related to the Satori malware, which the NetLab 360 guys called out in their article. And it looks like they're exploiting the Claymore management port. So Claymore is a cryptocurrency mining management type of piece of software. I recognized it because in our honeypot, we saw this come in. And immediately when I saw this hex mumbo jumbo, most people like myself would look at that and say, well, that's ASCII. I can tell that that looks like ASCII. And I thought I would bring this up because I wanted to mention a tool that a lot of us use, and I never really get a chance to mention it on the show. The GCHQ, which is part of the UK government, they actually released open source this tool called CyberChef. It's a client-side tool that allows you to do lots of operations on things. So I took that blob of hex that was there in our previous slide, and I put it in here and I said, convert it from hex, and then it shows me what is this actually trying to do. And you could see it's actually trying to run this ETH DCR miner 64. It's trying to join a particular pool. This is the Ethernet wallet ID that it's trying to connect with, et cetera, et cetera. So basically what happened is bad actor compromised the GPON router on port 8080, put some malware on there that starts scanning for other devices on port 3333 TCP, which is using an exploit for the Claymore cryptocurrency software to basically overwrite it with their own wallet ID so it starts mining for the bad actor's Ethereum wallet instead of the original person's. So I guess we'll see how that shakes out over the next couple of weeks, if it settles down or whatnot. But I thought it was interesting that we had a lot of visibility into a lot of the devices participating in these various types of activity.
And how about as far as the different botnets competing? Once one takes over one of these routers, does it then lock it so that another one still can't try to use it?
So I haven't checked. I don't know for sure. In the past, we've been aware of other types of scenarios where a lot of these guys do try to patch the vulnerability so that nobody else can come in and take over the device that they just compromised. Inevitably, a lot of times with these types of IoT embedded devices, they usually don't have a lot of persistence to them. So if you reboot the device, power reboot it, it's going to forget everything, and then it's still going to be vulnerable again, and then the next person can get it, which has been traditionally the problem here, is that with a power reboot, everything's clean, and then even if the guy got in, tried to like prevent somebody from coming in a second time, if the power cycles it, it's free game for anybody again. Okay. So anyway, so that's all we had for this week. I just thought there were some interesting corollaries between a lot of the activity there.